رضای ایران ذوالفقار، ایران عاشورا، میهن خدایی، صبر امام رضایی، ایران ذوالفقار، ایران عاشورا، در روح و جان من میمانی ای وطن، در روح و جان من میمانی.
Hi everybody, today is Tuesday, April 7th, 2026, and our dear friend, our brother, Professor Marandi is here with us. Welcome back, Professor.
Thank you, Nima. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's always a great pleasure.
Let me start, Professor Marandi. The footage that I played for you is from Iran right now. What is happening in Iran? Donald Trump is threatening Iranian people, but you see what is happening in Iran. People are on the streets they're supporting the policies of the government. They know that they have to fight and there is no other option. They have to fight until the end. But Professor Marandi, let me start with what Donald Trump, the president of the United States, said. He posted that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. He's basically talking about, Professor Marandi, using nuclear weapons, because it was reiterated by Vice President of the United States, who is in Hungary supporting Orban, and he said the same thing. There are tools that haven't been used by the United States, basically talking about nuclear weapons. Your reaction to what has happened and what Donald Trump is the way that Donald Trump is trying to intimidate Iranians?
Well, Nima, let me be very clear about everything. We are Shia Muslims, and we have an infinite faith in God. And we know that the path that we've chosen is the right path. Our sin is that we support the Palestinian people, not because we're from the same clan, not because we're from the same race, not because we're from the same sect, not because we have the same language, and not because we're even neighbors. Because they're victims. They've been victims for many decades. And now they're being slaughtered. And the West supports this slaughter. The collective West is behind the slaughter. The liberal democracies, as they like to call it, they fully endorse the slaughter. They will do whatever is possible to make it happen, to allow it to happen. Just like when Trump says that Iran will be obliterated and none of the Western media says anything, whether it's his opponents or his supporters, whether it's the Guardian or the Times in London, whether it's the New York Times or Breitbart, doesn't make a difference. When he says that he will send Iran back to the Stone Age, no one in the West is outraged. You do not see the Washington Post outraged. You do not see MSNBC outraged. Just like with Cuba, they starve the country. Just like with Syria, they enable ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The political establishment, when it comes to empire, they are brutal and immoral. So they are crushing the Palestinian people. For 2.5 years, the Palestinian people have been enduring genocide. And the only thing that stands between their complete annihilation, their extermination, is the axis of resistance. It is the Islamic Republic of Iran and its regional allies. That is our sin, but we cannot forsake the Palestinian people. It is not doable. It is not possible. We'd rather die standing than live or die on our knees. It's just not a choice that we can accept. I've discussed this on your show before, that we have a deep connection with what the Prophet's grandson did in Karbala, in defiance of the despot of his era. Hussein stood up against the tyrant of the time, and he and his companions were all martyred for the sake of what was right. And his sister continued the cause. This is deeply embedded in our culture. That is why you see men and women on the streets at night under missile fire. They target them with their missiles. As I told you last week, just near where I am now, I think I explained this last week, that a woman was murdered when they fired a missile at one of these crowds. They fire missiles at crowds. And the Western media and Western elites are completely indifferent. They justify it. If they had any humanity, one of these Western journalists with all their followers would have tweeted, "This is outrageous. We are committing crimes against humanity." Have you seen a single important Western journalist over the last week express outrage at the threat of bringing about the greatest Holocaust by far in human history? Have you seen any of these journalists at CNN or MSNBC or Sky News or the BBC? In fact, the BBC is so sinister, so evil, that one of their journalists claimed that people inside Iran are saying you can use nuclear weapons against us. Utterly evil. The BBC is utterly evil. It was always like this. I know. I've been dealing with the media for all these years. And all of those people who've contributed to the lies of Western media over these years to demonize Iran, to spread lies, whether it was about Mahsa Amini, who was never murdered, who was never beaten, or the lies about tens of thousands of peaceful protesters being slaughtered by the Iranian police, all lies. And now we see Trump himself admitting that he sent weapons to these protesters. If these were spontaneous protesters, who was he sending the weapons to? He was sending the weapons to those networks inside Iran that were getting their orders from outside. You just don't send weapons and put them in a street corner or in the middle of a square. You have people. So this was an armed insurrection, but Western media closed their eyes. And these so-called intellectuals, these leftists, some of them who pretend to be opposed to the mainstream, they repeated them. They have blood on their hands, every single one of them. Every single one of them have blood on their hands. Because it was very comforting for them. It was very easy for them to repeat the narratives. It made them more both acceptable in the mainstream, while they could also pretend to be subversive. They lied. They've been lying about Iran for 47 years. The moral compass is here in Tehran. This is the country that opposes genocide. All other countries are complicit. Except for, of course, Iran's allies, whether it's Yemen or Hezbollah and the resistance in Iraq, or those who support the resistance, who are in the hundreds of millions across the world now, if not billions. The supporters of the axis of resistance are going by the hour. And who are we standing up against? We're standing up against the tyrant of our time, who has the full support of the. Have you seen one European country call out Trump during the last week? Have you seen one European official say you're a monster, you're a mass murderer, you want to carry out a Holocaust? None. So what does Iran sin? It's its independence and its support for the Palestinian people. That is not coming to an end. Tonight will pass. We will see what happens tomorrow. But we will die standing, or we will stand and defeat the enemy.
What we've learned, Professor Marandi, that Iran has canceled all the communications with Americans directly, indirectly, through the Pakistani, Turkey, on all of that. What is the policy? What is the objective right now on the part of the Iranian government? And how is that the war? Let that happen? And what does Donald Trump want from Iran?
He wants total submission. He wants Iran to be subjugated. There is no compromise with this monster. Some people in Iran were naive to think that we can do a deal, we can cut a deal with Trump. It's not doable. A deal where your dignity and your principles are preserved is not possible with such a monster. After all, he's been carrying out a Holocaust in Gaza. He's helping carry out genocidal strikes against Lebanon day and night. He is strangling the people of Cuba as we speak, strangling a country of 10 million. And no one in the West protests. No one is outraged. No one in the global South is outraged. No one will stand up except for Iran, except for Yemen, except for Hezbollah. You know, General Soleimani said famously, I said this once before on your show, we are the nation of martyrdom. We are the nation of Imam Hussein. This is actually contrary to what the West thinks about Iran and says about Iran, and what these regimes in the region that, like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Erdogan and others who've been trying to demonize Iran for decades. This is not a rejection of life. This is a celebration of life. We are prepared to be martyred to spare the children of Gaza. They're not our children. We're not Arabs. They're not our neighbors. In fact, in the Arab world, and they're constantly antagonizing Iran. They're constantly antagonizing Hezbollah. They try to slander the Shia. Always. Why? Because the empire wants division, and their proxies, in order to justify their inaction and complicity, like Azerbaijan and Turkey and the Emirates and Egypt and Jordan and the rest, they have to demonize those who are sincerely supporting the oppressed. They have to. So despite all that, it is the resistance, it is Iran that is opposing genocide. How can it be that a state, that a people that oppose genocide, they are the ones committing genocide at home, they are the evil ones, and the good governments are the ones who are supporting the genocide in Gaza? Can any sane person really believe that? Can a single sane person who has a bit of integrity believe that? So this is the story. This is the reality. We are on the side of the oppressed. We are on the side of the marginalized. And we want our independence. And the empire finds this to be intolerable. And the empire has very, very powerful arms and many, many proxies. They will divide and rule. They will impose sanctions. They will support terrorism. They'll engage in wars. But Iran remains steadfast. Until now, we've seen for 47 years, they've failed to defeat Iran. But when they hit Iran now, they should be prepared to be beaten back. They should be prepared to accept the punishment. The Iranians are no longer going to hold back. They strike our vital infrastructure. We strike the vital infrastructure of all those regimes that are involved in this genocidal aggression, whether it's the Israeli regime or US proxies in the region or any US assets that are available to us across the board. We will make sure that the United States under Trump is defeated. We will make sure that Netanyahu faces a strategic defeat, regardless of the pain. And there is pain, and there will be more pain. They're murdering people. Today they bombed a market in Tehran. They bombed a synagogue. They bombed a synagogue. The Israeli regime bombed a synagogue in Tehran. Why? Because they don't care about Jews. They hate Jews. They only care about Zionism and their supremacism. They don't care for Jews. Why in the world would they, of all places in Tehran, why would they bomb a synagogue? Because anything that stands against them or anything that is not with them deserves death and destruction. And the West, the elites in the West, are fully supportive of this. The only way to defeat them, Nima, is to stand up and to resist. And we are a nation of resistance. And I think by now everyone knows that we are the nation of resistance. These are not mere slogans. These are not empty words. For decades, these regimes in the Persian Gulf, the Erdogan regime and others, were saying, promoting the idea that Iran and the resistance, it's just talk. We've seen over the last 2.5 years who has made the sacrifices and who continues to make the sacrifices and who is steadfast. So people have to start rethinking they have to start rethinking Iran. They have to start rethinking the resistance. They have to start rethinking the axis of resistance. And people across the world have to make their own decisions. Are they going to sit down and let the world be ruined by this monster? Or are they going to stand up and resist? Are they going to go to the streets? Are they going to boycott? Are they going to push their governments to take a stand? Or are they just going to sit at home and like your video? Or at most put a comment? And I'm sure many of your viewers are active. Many of them are people who are doing whatever they can. But I'm speaking to those who are not doing anything. Resistance means not purchasing Western goods, not purchasing American goods, boycotting anything and everything American, encouraging others to ignore anything that comes from the United States, even within the United States, and all those countries affiliated to the United States, to push governments, to push people to rise up. We have to bring about change before it's too late. Are we going to sit back and wait till Palestinians in Gaza are exterminated? Are we going to wait till they get rid of all the kids? All the kids die of disease and hunger and cold and heat and warmth and of illnesses that could easily be treated? Or are we going to increase the pressure? I'm not pessimistic. You know me, Nima. I'm not pessimistic. I'm optimistic about the future. I don't know my fate. I don't know the fate of my family. I don't know the fate of people in this building. But my responsibility is to remain steadfast. And the responsibility of the people around me is to do the same. And whenever I see people whose legs are shaking, I have to encourage them to be strong. And whenever someone sees my legs shaking, they have to encourage me to be strong. But again, I ask your audience, if the Islamic Republic of Iran did not have the strongest of moral legitimacy and popular support, could it have survived this onslaught of this madman, of these madmen, of this evil ideology alone? Who is supporting Iran? It's alone. Some countries may be trading a bit or assisting a bit, but Iran is on its own. It's on its own. And it could have cut a deal many times in the past. It could have surrendered its sovereignty. It could have been another Egypt or another Turkey or another Pakistan or any other country on this planet. But it chose to be independent and it chose to have principles. And it will remain that way, inshallah.
Professor Marandi, the language that being used by the President of the United States on the eve of Easter, he called all Iranian bastards. And then we have, again, literally talking about putting an end to this civilization in Iran, which is, I think he doesn't understand what he's talking about. He doesn't know Iranian people, Iranian culture, Iranian civilization, Iranian faith. He doesn't know anything about all these things. But he, after all, the language he's using, I think this is the end of the international community. Because as you've mentioned, nobody's objecting to that. This is the language that Adolf Hitler was using while he was killing people, assassinating people. This is, again, you see that the President of the United States is using against Iran. This is nothing new. We have this in history and is reiterating by the President of the United States right now to somehow convince people what he's doing is right. But how do you see the international community? How do you see the language that he's using? There is no outrage, as you've mentioned.
Actually, I don't think Adolf Hitler or Saddam Hussein or any of the tyrants of history ever spoken in that particular way, the way in which Trump did and does repeatedly amid silence across the West. I don't recall Saddam Hussein, even during his murderous and genocidal war against Iran, I don't recall him saying that we're going to wipe out a civilization. I don't recall ever hearing that Hitler said that with all the crimes that he's committed. The only one that I can think of in contemporary history is, of course, those who call the Palestinians Amalek. They are the ones who are talking about wiping people out. In the past, maybe in past centuries, this was more open. I mean, the British Empire and other empires throughout history have done many things. Historians should tell us what language was used, and I'm sure this sort of language was used by different despots throughout history. But in contemporary history, among the main despots and evil monsters, such as the two I named, I don't recall ever seeing such a quote. But Zionists, that is the language of Zionism. That is the language of Zionism. Go and look and see what they were calling the Palestinians when they began the genocide in Gaza. Look at the terminology used by these people. So there is one example which it seems Trump is repeating, and I think that is where he's getting his language.
Yeah. So I think, Professor Marandi, when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, today we had J.D. Vance talking about the Strait of Hormuz. One of the most important things that he has mentioned that could bring, could force the United States, as he has in his mind, to use nuclear weapons is the Strait of Hormuz. He's calling it, economic terrorism or something like that. a new term being introduced to the English language by the US Vice President J.D. Vance. But after all, what is the Strait of Hormuz? I don't see Iran didn't close the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is managing the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has been cooperating with other countries in the Strait of Hormuz. And what is the policy in the Strait of Hormuz that is not somehow acceptable for Donald Trump?
Those against Iran are using the Strait of Hormuz. Iraq can use the Strait of Hormuz. Those countries that have purchased goods, they can take their goods, but as long as Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain are facilitating aggression against Iran, allowing the Epstein access to use their land, sea, and air against the Iranian people, we're not going to let them use the Strait of Hormuz. Some countries which are not at war with Iran, they've done deals with Iran and their ships have left the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz. But those regimes that are killing our kids, from where missiles are being fired, from where jets are flying from to slaughter our people, to bomb our markets, to bomb mosques and synagogues? No, of course not. The terrorist is Vance. The terrorist is Trump. The terrorist is Netanyahu and the Israeli regime and all those who cooperate with them. These are the terrorists. We didn't start this war, even though the Western media, which has been silent about all the nonsense that Trump has been saying for the last few days, alongside Western leaders and leaders from across the world who've all been silent. Western media has said nothing about who the aggressor is. You would think if you watch CNN or Fox News that it was Iran that started the war. And every step of the way, it was the other side that brought us escalation. Iran never initiated escalation. Iran never initiated escalation. The other side initiated escalation. But when they start targeting our critical infrastructure, then we will retaliate. There's no other way to do this. And we will remain steadfast, come what may. So Vance is in no position to talk about Iran. He has blood on his hands. He started this war. He's a part of this administration or this regime, the Trump regime. And it's extraordinary how the audacity of these people in the corridors of power in the West and in their obedient media, whether it's the BBC, the sinister BBC, or Fox News or whoever, that they can turn the victim into the aggressor. But this isn't the first time, is it? The people of Gaza have been the aggressor for decades. They've been the aggressors. That's why there's no sympathy for them in the Western media. That's why during the Holocaust in Gaza, they were indifferent and quiet. That's why when the Israelis flattened Beirut, they called all those apartment blocks Hezbollah strongholds. Why? Because they're foot soldiers for the empire. They create the language to assist and enable genocide, slaughter, and massacre. So again, this just shows to anyone who is fair-minded who the Iranians are, who Hezbollah is, and who their adversaries are.
There was an operation, Professor Marandi, yesterday Donald Trump was talking about, and a successful operation, rescue operation in Iran. It's all about a second pilot of F-15E that he was somehow describing for more than an hour. He was describing how this mission was going in each and every detail, and somehow you may be fascinated. How is he preparing? Why does he need to go that far to describe what has happened, to show it was a total victory on his part? What is the understanding on the part of Iranian of what has happened in that operation?
Well, the more he talks, the more it shows that it's a failure. And he knows it. And so do the people around him. And of course, so do those who control the media. But of course, for almost 40 days now, everything has been a success. And we've been losing. But I don't know why our missiles don't finish, our drones don't finish. And when they carry out a ground assault, which is possible, they may carry out a ground assault soon. They will again speak about success, but after a few days, they'll find out that that's been a failure too. It's been a failure from day one, regardless of what the Western media tells you. It's been a failure throughout. Only atrocity. Their only success is killing kids, but they're good at that. The West, the collective West, that's what their expertise is. We've seen it in Gaza. We see it when they strangle the people of Syria and put in ISIS and Al Qaeda. We see what they did in Libya, what they do in Cuba, and the list goes on. But this operation was interesting because it shouldn't have happened this way, first of all. And it's clear that those assets, this is what the Iranians believe, that it is clear that those assets were prepared for something very different. But they were using those assets that were prepared for major operation inside Iran. They used them to save this person. Now, this person was probably of importance that they put so much effort into rescuing him. And they lost 2 planes, a number of drones and helicopters just in the operation. And they spent huge amounts of money because planes were flying overhead. And it is believed in Iran that a number of soldiers did die. There is footage fighting, and there's footage of the plane being damaged. There's footage of a helicopter being damaged. And those who were involved in the fighting say that there were definitely casualties. And most probably a number of people were killed. But the United States is hiding its numbers. I don't know if the numbers that the Iranians are saying are correct. Those are numbers that I can't verify either. I don't know. I'm not on the battlefield. But people who were in the field were saying that they took bad hits. And when they were taking these people on the planes and carrying them on the planes to take them away, they were badly injured people or worse. So I think that probably, and this is no one knows for certain, but probably that this was a team that was put together to carry out an operation deep inside Iran, but it didn't work. And remember, this was not an area that's highly populated. Few locals went and fought them. This is a part of that area is a part of the country that's very sparsely populated. People should keep in mind that Iran is a country of the size of Germany, France, and the UK combined and a bit more. It's huge. And the population is mostly in the north and in the west, right? Because the north there are many mountains, and the west mountains and the snow, and there's water, and so there's agriculture, and there's cities, and there are forests, and there's the land is, the weather is better. So the population, there are nice places in the south too, but the population of Iran is not concentrated in evenly throughout the country. So that area was sparsely populated. People, and this is another interesting point. Trump, the monster, and the BBC, another monster, said, or a bunch series of monsters, he said that people want us to bomb them. And the BBC actually went further and said people want us to nuke them. And I tweeted this from the BBC. Of course, someone else picked it up, but then I tweeted that BBC journalist criminal who posted this so that people could see the true nature of the BBC. But Trump went and said that people in Iran want us to bomb them. But then one of his senior commanders went and said, whoever had a gun was shooting at us. Which is it? Which is it? Today, you see young people from across the country going to power plants and staging sit-ins saying, bomb us. These are against the so-called regime. Who in the West would do that for their regimes? And this is not about just rallying around the flag. You cannot, of course, people rally around the flag, but no one is going to rally around the flag of some genocidal creature. If people did not accept the Islamic Republic of Iran, they would not fight for it this way, risk their lives for it this way, go out on the streets every night, go to electric power plants and stage sit-ins, take their guns and go, these villagers take their guns and go off and fight these commandos. This is this is the spirit of the Iranian people. This is what General Soleimani was saying, that we are the nation of martyrdom. We're the nation of Imam Hussein. The Americans, the regime in Washington, they have chosen the wrong country to mess around with.
Yeah. And what you've mentioned, it was the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, General Kane, who said that every single Iranian that owned a small gun or a rifle was shooting at us. This is the reality and what they're trying to ignore. And Donald Trump said that people are happy we are bombing them. This is the reality somehow getting out by his commander, his general. Yesterday, he mentioned that. Professor Marandi, the other point is what is important for Donald Trump, and even Lindsey Graham today was talking about it, yesterday was talking about it, about how Iran is managing the Strait of Hormuz and removing the importance of dollar, or somehow influencing the importance of dollar, because Iran is right now they don't want to be dependent on US dollar anymore. For more than 46 years, Iran was under tremendous sanctions. And what is the policy in the Strait of Hormuz that is hitting so hard Lindsey Graham and the people like him?
Well, first of all, they don't want us to use the dollar. They've sanctioned us. It's maximum pressure sanctions. They want to starve our economy. They want to make Iranians suffer. So if they don't want us to use the dollar, then we'll use something else. What are they complaining about? But Iran will no doubt control the Strait of Hormuz, and it will fight for it, and it will succeed. And if the United States escalates, Nima, these Arab dictatorships in the Persian Gulf will probably cease to exist. If I was living there now, I would leave. Because if they start striking our critical infrastructure, they've already done so, but as we go forward, then Iran is going to destroy theirs. And their critical infrastructure is much more expensive, and all of it is alongside the coast, and none of it is indigenous. All of our critical infrastructure made by Iranian and Iranian engineers. Their critical infrastructure was made by major Western corporations for the most part, and they're right in front of us alongside the Persian. These are deserts. All they have is either oil or gas. And without anything but oil and gas, if they don't have water or electricity, they're finished. If they don't have oil or gas, they're finished. And they can't complain because they thought that their overlord will take us out. And it didn't happen. So now they're going to pay the price. Either they back down and end this war, and they can end it today. Nima, the leaders of the Persian Gulf Cooperation Council, they can sit together today and say, all Americans must immediately leave our territory. All American soldiers must immediately leave our territory. They can no longer land their planes here. They can no longer refuel here. They can no longer load bombs here. They can no longer fly over our airspace. They can no longer fire missiles at Iran from here. They can no longer use our territory against Iran, our shore against Iran. then except for the issue of reparations, which they will have to pay, it would be over. How could Trump continue with this genocidal war? It won't be possible for him anymore. Without them, he can't do it. So when the destruction of their infrastructure happens, when it takes place, they have no one to complain to, but it won't be livable there. And within 3, 4, 5 weeks, I mean, you're from the south of Iran. When does it get very hot and humid in that area? Just a few weeks from now. And then the sands from the Arabian Peninsula and, US weapons and weapon systems, they're not well protected because they're not in their bases. They are all, they've been brought urgently for a very short war that they were supposed to win overnight. This is going to be very bad news for, Trump wants to increase the budget, the military budget, to $1.5 trillion, and of course take it from the mouths of orphans and from the marginalized and to feed his war machine. But a lot of that money, if not all of it, is going to go to repairing all the equipment that they brought to this region, which is going to suffer serious damage. The war aside, from the heat and from the sand and from the sandstorms that they will begin to see in the weeks ahead. But in any case, these countries are not going to be livable, especially for these very wealthy people who benefited from oil and gas all these years. They won't be able to tolerate this situation. These regimes will all collapse. They will all collapse. Either new people will come to power and Iran will welcome them, or there will be chaos, or they will be diminished. These regimes will remain, but they will be diminished. But they have no one to blame but themselves.
Were they using these GCC countries to do the operation in Iran? Because we've seen, as the operation was going on, we've seen that Iran is hitting some targets in Kuwait. What was the connection between the two?
Yes, they've been firing. They've even used social media, the U.S. armed forces, to show that they fire missiles from these countries. And of course, those planes that were down, those 3 planes that were downed over Kuwaiti airspace, how did they get over to Kuwaiti airspace? Because they were using them. All these countries are involved. And right now, American soldiers are in these countries. Because their bases are being destroyed, they're hiding in hotels. They're still there. Their assets are being spread out across the country. They're firing at Iran from outside. But it's more than that. These regimes are now complicit. Iran is not just going to say, okay, we've destroyed the American bases, but you are complicit and they are destroying our infrastructure. We will destroy your infrastructure. And especially since most of this infrastructure is partially owned or owned by Western corporations and companies, those will be our priority first. But these regimes have no reason to complain. They've killed our kids. The slaughter of the kids in Mina is thanks to them. None of these regimes apologize. And by the way, these regimes are also funding the war too. The Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, these 3, it is known that they help fund the Trump war. And now Trump wants more from them. But in any case, as I said, they're complicit at all levels. And Iran is the side that has shown restraint because Iran is a moral actor. We did not start this war. We did not initiate any stage of the escalation. But when they escalated, we escalated.
Here is what the IRGC just came out. And if the United States Army crosses the red lines, the response will go beyond the region. We will strike the United States and partner infrastructure in a way that denies them access to the region's oil and gas for years. And they're even talking about, Professor Marandi, because the Bab al-Mandab is not in the game right now. He's not being closed effectively by Houthis, by
We're
Ansar
very close,
in Yemen.
though.
Yeah.
We're very, very, very close. The Yemen and Iraq, the resistance in Yemen and Iraq, have made some small moves. In Iraq more than Yemen, but they have not yet made the game-changing moves that they can and will make if this expands, which is expected now.
We've seen in the news that Iranian expert together with Hezbollah expert, they're in Yemen, I don't know if that's right, but there were some sort of reports that I think that's related to the fate of the Bab el-Mandab in the Red Sea and how they're going to react to the escalation on the part of the United States.
By now, Yemen has more than enough experts. I don't know who comes and who goes, but Yemen has lots of experts, and their abilities are very much indigenous. They produce their own systems, they produce their own infrastructure, and they won a war against the United States already. So I'm sure that there's cooperation between all of the elements of the axis of resistance at the local level, and with regards to training and new technologies. But the infrastructure in Yemen, just like in Lebanon and just like in Iraq, these countries are full of young, smart people, educated people who are pushing forward and helping strengthen those entities.
Yeah. Since we mentioned the media in the West, we have to mention that Tucker Carlson is calling on the US military and people close to Donald Trump to either resign or take away the nuclear codes from Donald Trump. This is the guy who supported Tucker Carlson, who supported Donald Trump, who did everything to facilitate the process of electing Donald Trump, re-electing Donald Trump in the United States. Right now, they are getting away from Donald Trump. They don't want this from Donald Trump, and they don't see anything good coming out. And he had a report yesterday basically talking about the language that Donald Trump is using, that nobody understands what's going on with Donald Trump. I think we have to mention these people who are courageous, who understand what's at stake for the United States in a long run.
Yes, Tucker Carlson was, I would guess, one of the two people who were most influential in bringing him to power, alongside Elon Musk, I would assume. So, of course, he's very important. But there is the MAGA cult, and the MAGA cult are not rational people. They're not people who have any moral compass. I mean, anyone who supports Trump, anyone who supports the regime in Washington has no moral compass. I mean, whether it's Democrat or Republican, but Trump, is very clear. It's very crude. I mean, threatening to carry out a Holocaust, saying that he will carry out a Holocaust tonight, shows how evil and sinister he is. But the fact that he still has these supporters shows that a segment of American society is beyond redemption. But things are turning against him. And Ayatollah Khamenei, before he was martyred, he said about Trump, he compared him to the Pharaoh, and he said the Pharaoh fell at the height of his power. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact wording. It was his last speech or the second to last speech. People can find it on the website. But he basically was predicting that he will fall like the Pharaoh.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Marandi. I know these are, it's unbelievable what's going on, and it's tragic what's going on, because people in Iran are not happy with the case, and they know there is no other option but to fight back. And this is the problem, that the Middle East should be freed. I think, after all, whatever happens in the region, after such a long time, the Middle East should be freed of what's going on. American dominance should be. I think what Iran has done. Yeah.
Zionism.
Yeah,
Zionism.
exactly. Zionism is running
The Holocaust that's being threatened, it's Zionism. The Amalek narrative, it's Zionism. This is all Zionism. What Trump is saying, what Netanyahu said, this is all Zionism. Of this genocidal mentality, it is all Zionism, and it will come to an end. We are on, regardless of what these Western pundits and politicians say and how they demonize us, we're on the side of truth and justice. All we're saying is that ethno-supremacism and genocide are wrong, and for that we've been demonized for 47 years. And we're saying it about a people, again, that we're not cousins. They're not our cousins. They're not our neighbors. They're far away. They're not that close. They're countries that stand between us and Palestine. But it's the moral principle. They're human beings, just like their children are just like my children. Their women are just like Iranian women. Their men are just like you and me.
Exactly.
And so as human beings, as Shia Muslims, we cannot bow down to the emperor. It is not possible. Ayatollah Khamenei, in his very last speech, he quoted Imam Hussein and said the likes of Imam Hussein cannot give allegiance to the likes of Yazid, saying that he cannot give allegiance to the likes of Trump. And we cannot give our allegiance to the likes of Trump. That is our destiny. Doesn't matter what happens, because God is just.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Marandi. Great pleasure, as always.
Thank you, Nima. Great pleasure.